I like the carpet, but I'm looking at that chair, and I'm thinking the chair might be nicer. What I want to share with you today, I think, will change the way that you think about the people that are around you, and I hope will change the way that you think about yourselves. And what I want to say is easy to say. In other words, it's a short sentence that I'll share with you, but take some time to understand and take some time to apply. And the message is this. It's that our moods, our experience, are shared with other people. Now, what do we mean shared? By shared, we mean relationships we have with those around us. Now, we all think we know what relationships are about, right? Relationships are about protecting us from loneliness. They're about sources of fun. They're about places that we get support. But actually, the relationships that we have with the people around us structure the kind of world that we live in. They give structure to it. Let me give some examples. You can invite a research subject into a room. Already in that room is sitting somebody sitting in that room who is looking a little fidgety, they're maybe feeling a little anxious. Bring the subject in, and you ask the subject afterwards, when they come out of that room, how they felt. And what's interesting is that they can identify the anxiety that they felt. What they can't identify, though, is that the other person in the room is also feeling anxious. Let me give you another example, because I don't want you to think that this is just about emotion. The way we organize social space, usually at this point in the talk, this is where I would get up close to somebody and sort of break these rules we have for how close we're supposed to get to people. But since a lot of you are from New York, or certainly in New York now, there's also what's called the elevator effect. I'm sure you've all been in an elevator at least one point in your life. And what's interesting about the elevator effect is that people will stand equidistant from each other in the elevator. That's kind of interesting. But what's even more interesting about that is that nobody ever tells you to do that, right? Nobody sits you down and says, Adam, when you get in an elevator, make sure you only stand 3 inches from the person next to you. Make sure that that space is carefully navigated, right? Nobody ever tells you that. We just pick it up. It's not cognitive. It's not conscious. We just pick it up from the people around us. I might have an example. I'll share this one with you. We were watching Michael Jackson this morning. Dance. We're watching on YouTube. And another example for how we share moods with each other is music, right? We're tapped into music all the time. Why do we listen to music? Oh, because it's fun, because it's exciting. But when you go to either listen to somebody speak, to hear a talk, to listen to music, there's a mood that we pick up from that person. And it's the mood that we want to have. It's the way that they change our way of being. That's what we want to pick up. So what's the point of all these examples? The point of these examples is that we're swimming all the time in these sort of social fields, the people around us. They're exerting their effects on us without our even knowing it. And they're not just changing the way we feel, but the way we think, what we can see. Our entire way of being is shared. It's contagious. Now, what does this have to do with the way we live our lives? Well, think about it. Think about the world that you live in today. All of the busyness, all of the anxiety, all of the defeatism, all of the competitiveness, that's all contagious, right? We pass that on. But the opposite must also be true, that the calm, the contentedness, the confidence, the peace that we feel can also be contagious. What could these things do for people? Let me give some more examples. There's a fun game. We'll call it the balloon game. And you play it on a computer. And the purpose of the game is to hit a key to blow the balloon up as big as you can get it. And the bigger the balloon gets, the more points you get when you hit another key, right? You can collect the points whenever you want, depending on how big the balloon is. Now, what you don't know as a person playing the game is that the computer will randomly pop the balloon, right? So you don't know when it's going to pop, but the bigger you can get it to go up and then hit the key to collect the points, the more points you get. What you do on the computer monitor, down the bottom right-hand corner, is you have a face, somebody on camera. You don't necessarily have to tell the research subject that they need to look at the person down. You just have it there on the monitor. If the face on the monitor is one of confidence, one of happiness, you will risk blowing the balloon up bigger than you would if it's a face of worry or anxiety. Let me share another one. I think this one's so key. This is a study that rewards you the more you think about it. Imagine a table. We don't have one on stage, but imagine a table. Connected to that table is a piece of plexiglass, okay, that you can see through. Now imagine a baby. You put the baby on the table. What's the baby do? It explores the table. It eventually crawls up towards the edge of the table where the plexiglass is. Can't see the plexiglass. It stops, looks at mom. Now what mom does is going to have a huge impact on the baby at this point. If mom goes and gives a worried face, the baby will sit up, move back from the side of the table, cry, and want to be held. But, and this is the critical piece, this is so interesting. If mom gives baby a look of confidence and invites the baby to come, the baby will step off the edge of the table onto the plexiglass and crawl towards its mother. So interesting. What does this mean for us? It demonstrates that in some ways we're wired for contagion from a very early age, but even more interestingly, the contagion, the mood that we have, actually determines the situation, right? We think that the moods that we have are a derivative or an effect of the situations that we're in, but actually that's not the case. Situations come at the back end. The mood comes first. Now, I know you're all thinking, all right, Derrick, you're a neuro guy. What's this have to do with the brain? So I'll tell you. I'll tell you what we know anyway, which isn't much. But I'll give you a hypothesis, and I'll give you a thought experiment. The thought experiment's this. We have a brain, prefrontal cortex, the gray matter right behind your forehead, that's 3 times the size that would be predicted for an ape. I know none of us are apes, but an ape of our size. What's all that brain matter doing? What could it be doing? Well, we say, we're a very smart species, we're intellectual, we have math, we have science, but our brain's been the same for 100,000 years. Math and science is a very recent development, very recent. Why do we have these brains? Is it because we have a kind of sixth sense, a social sense of what's going on around us? We can pick up on these social cues and allow them to pervade the sorts of worlds that we're in. The brain makes it possible. Think about the baby again. The brain makes it possible to let our way of being come first and the situation to come second. This brings you to a critical point in the talk, I think. This is what I want to say. In society today, there are a lot of books, a lot of talks that talk about how to succeed, how to get ahead, and how to have an impact. But what contagion science teaches us, the examples that I've just been sharing with you, is that you're always already having an impact on the world around you now. And you think you don't matter? You matter. You're having an impact. TED. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. What the science teaches us is that we're designing the worlds that we live in. Together, you and me. We're designing them together. Every board meeting, every classroom, every therapy session, every interaction you have with people in your life, you're having an impact. You're making a difference. Or maybe a difference is being made upon you. So we've seen a lot of movies about this. You have the failing classroom. Students are in the classroom, they don't want to learn, they're not interested, they're not engaged. Teacher comes in, tries to work with these students, makes no progress. You would be tempted to say that the hopelessness of the situation is in the situation. It's a hopeless situation, right? But it's not the hopeless situation, it's a hopeless mood. And moods can change, right? The students are bringing hopelessness from their community into the classroom. And then eventually it infects the teacher, where the teacher thinks that maybe the situation's hopeless itself. But if you can change the mood with the students, and then the students go back to their communities, the impact continues, because we're all connected in this web of life. Now, you may be asking yourselves, okay, what determines whether I catch someone else's anxiety or they catch my confidence? What determines that? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you all asked in your heads. Because the answer to this is as surprising as it is interesting. And the answer is this: self-focus. Self-focus is the answer. What does that mean? Well, you can have self-focus, you can have other focus. Other focus doesn't necessarily mean the people around you. It can be something other than yourself. If you have self-focus, you are more likely to be receptive and passive to the moods that are around you. If, on the other hand, you have other focus, you're more likely to be contagious. You're more likely to pass on the mood that you have. Now, it's a little more complicated than that. So there's a second piece, which is the strength of your way of being. And we can measure the strength of a person's way of being in 5 ways: how elaborate, how authentic, how committed, how well understood, and how present is the way of being. Anybody who has more of those 5 things will win in a Contagion contest every time. The trick, however, is that all the things I've just listed, these are not things that you can just will yourself to have. You can't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to have a more elaborate way of being today. You just can't do it. What does this mean? What it means is that you can't just believe in yourself. You have to do something every day so that you deserve to believe in who you are and what you're doing. You have to find a source, and you have to turn to that source every day. And that source will strengthen your way of being. It'll make you more contagious in the world. The second thing is give yourself permission to be contagious. Just give it to yourself, right? And as you believe in what you do and who you are, you'll give yourself that permission. And lastly, be here now. Be in the present. Because here, wherever that is for you, now and in the future, that's where change is going to happen. And that's my message for you. Thanks.